As a child, I've always been fascinated by the paranormal, whether it be ghosts, aliens, and everything in between. This fascination of mine mainly took place on early YouTube on the family computer, often with something caught on tape. There were several videos during this period that left me speechless, and not because I was too stupid to formulate sentences yet. A little background on what I believe to give you some context as to how I view cases such as these. In the words of Mike Stoklasta, the paranormal, including Zach Baggins, are a guilty pleasure of mine.
I am a rational skeptic. I am not a person who blindly believes in ghosts or the paranormal. I find it all fascinating.
Sure. This addiction of mine, including Zach Baggins, started all the way back with the peak of the creepypasta hype. Today, I often view things with a skeptic's eye. Not that I won't believe in anything, but more so I actually need evidence for me to do so. That is what I would like this series to focus on, the paranormal, and basically everything I find fascinating in that regard. Our first case comes from Phoenix, Arizona, and actually involves two incidents known rightfully as the Phoenix Lights. This was not just some isolated incident seen by a few individuals who took a few too many shrooms, but was seen by a decent amount of the population in the area. On March 13, 1997 at 7:55 p.m., residents started to notice odd lights in the sky, which was certainly a cause for concern. The lights were originally described as 5 separate lights which appeared in the arc shape, almost as if they were in the shape of some sort of balloon. Obviously, this is a cause for concern, and soon, calls began to slowly come in to report the incident, and eventually ramping up to the point where the sheer volume was unmanageable. The lights would appear stationary at first. However, to the horror of the residents, it soon became apparent the lights were actually moving, with the spacing between the lights increasing and now forming a V shape. Later, at 10 p.m., the lights would be seen in a row, silently hovering and slowly falling from the sky before disappearing as fast as they came. Man, trust me, if you were in elementary school and saw this, you'd believe anything is possible.
Anything's possible! Anything's possible!
The images of the event are foreboding. To imagine a craft of that size silently watching us as we go along with our lives. I believe the footage speaks for itself.
Focus here. We got major hockey puck activity. I think that one on the left may split in half.
Despite it being the 90s, there were a surprising amount of photos and videos of the incident. You'd figure if they could get this amount of evidence in the 90s, we would have plenty more today, but turns out, most people don't know what 1080p is. With an event such as this, it makes sense people want to speculate and create their own theories as to what happened. Whether it be a secret government black project, flares, or even an extraterrestrial craft. Let's take a look and try to find out what really happened that night. I want to start off with the paranormal theories because they're the most interesting and I just can't help myself. The first theory believes that the sighting was actually an extraterrestrial UFO or a UAP as they're known today. Pretty self-explanatory, but in case you're in the first grade, I'll explain. A portion of the residents who viewed the lights that night actually believed it was a giant craft in the shape of a large V. People who believe the theory point to the fact that the lights seem to go against conventional aircrafts of the time and flares.
When it got directly over my head, and I mean, I'm talking dead center here, I was right underneath this thing. And I look up, it was like there was no filament in this thing. They appear to be in a canister. There was light swimming around in this shape or form.
We could not see the whole object from front to back, from side to side. It was so big.
I would gauge this object to be several football fields.
These claims do make sense when we just view the videos and images of the event, and without further exploration, could lead people to this conclusion. Perhaps these aliens simply wish to observe us in our daily interactions only to realize they were visible before promptly disappearing in a blink of an eye. The incident after the fact would reach national headlines, and soon everyone knew of what happened to Phoenix. What if it was not just some extraterrestrial looking to catch a DUI, but a hologram? The hologram was created so the government could conduct a psychological experiment. The purpose of the experiment was to test the public's reaction to the event and alter the perceptions of the event. What? The government funding black projects? They could never do that, right? According to Randall Fitzgerald, that developed holographic projects during the time of his other article, were the 1997 Arizona Lights, a psychological warfare experiment, which I was unable to gain access to. According to him, the first holographic project originated at the Army Research Lab in Maryland. The author then claims it was actually the Maryland Air National Guard that dropped flares, which confused the public. Not only would this serve to confuse the public, but serves as a connection with the holographic project in Maryland. The object people actually saw that night was a 3D holographic display, which was developed by the research facility in Maryland. A second project titled A Research Paper Presented to Air Force 2025 discusses developing an airborne holographic project to display a three-dimensional hologram for deception and psychological warfare. The flares that were claimed to be the culprit of the lights may have actually been a 3D hologram of a real craft called the TR-3B Astra, and it may have been a test to determine if the public could notice a difference between the two. Less than 3 weeks after the Arizona Lights phenomenon, 2 pilots would purposely crash themselves into a Colorado mountain. It's speculated by the author that this was done to silence them, as they may have known too much about the Black Project. That certainly was an interesting perspective on what truly happened with the Phoenix Lights. It's hard to believe that such technology existed back in the 90s when CGI still looked like this. What is the explanation that is often used to explain what happened that night? I have already covered a bit of what people believe happened in the theories I've touched, so you might already have an idea. There were 2 events that happened that night, one at 7:55 p.m. and the other at 10 p.m. and both could potentially be explained by 2 different incidents by the same organization. This organization would be known as Operation Snowbird, which was a training program for pilots during the winter, performed by the National Guard in Tucson, Arizona. The first incident, in which the lights formed a V shape, could be explained by 5 A-10 jets from Operation Snowbird. These jets aren't subject to the same FAA regulations like commercial aircrafts, hence why, rather than seeing blinking lights like one would expect, they were solid. The second incident could actually be explained by flares deployed by a different set of jets. Do you remember the previous description of a row of lights slowly falling? Well, that could be used to describe a set of flares falling from the sky. These flares weren't even dropped in Phoenix, but rather Prim County, but due to how bright they were, they could still be seen in Phoenix. The disappearance of the lights could be explained by them disappearing behind a mountain range. Overall, I do believe that this is a valid explanation as to what happened, and actually no extraterrestrial or black projects were involved, unless we are being deceived. Soon after the incident, the governor of Arizona would claim to actually have found who was responsible for the activity that night.
The governor then really drops a bomb, saying he has actually solved this mystery. What's more, he says DPS has arrested a suspect. And then he shows us who he is.
Now, this just goes to show that you guys are entirely too serious.
And it might be a bit hypocritical due to the fact he saw the lights that night too. He even went on to basically say it was a mystery as to what happened that night.
Unquestionably, it was a UFO, which means unidentified flying object.
That doesn't mean we're being visited.
Well, it's nothing like anything I've ever seen.
And you're an Air Force guy.
Yeah, and a pilot. Got a lot of hours flying. So it was...
Yeah, I know this was a bit of a short one, but I figured I might as well post something, even if it isn't much. I do have other videos I'm planning on making in the future, but I don't really want to mention them right now. That's basically it, so let me know if you want me to cover anything else. Thanks, bye.